Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And already a funky little tech glitch, so I just muted everyone. I'm going to have everyone mute and unmute themselves as they go, which I know is a pain in the rear end, but already it's a Monday, and I was expecting it, and here we go. But just want to say before we start out talking Boston police officer John O'Keefe and, of course, Karen Reed, who's at the center of it all. We always do it in the reverse, but we should be remembering John O'Keefe every single time. Look at this. Beth from Arkansas. Wow, I caught a live. Yes, you did. Couple things. Crime Con was amazing. Absolutely incredible. Loved it. Actually got to meet Lauren Conlin, who's on the panel tonight, in person. And we had a great time. I'm going to try to slowly unmute everyone. I think we're going to be okay. And I'll tell you, the two comments I got most often was, you're taller than I thought, and you're less fat in person. It wasn't that you were skinnier in person. It was less fat. I think I have one of those fat faces because I smile a lot, and it was good to hear those two things. I might have to hire Brother Counsel to sue everybody, but I think I've recovered. Lauren Conlin, did you enjoy yourself? What was the highlight?
Yes, I had so much fun. It's going to take me a while to recover. I'm not fully recovered yet, but just for the record, I never thought you looked fat. That's super rude of people. I never thought you looked fat at all.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just honest, but no, I mean, the
you.
highlight was meeting everybody. I think meeting the people that I communicate with and I listen to and I work with. And so that was great.
Look at Space Coast coming to my aid from the West Coast. He takes care of all things technical. Space Coast saying congrats on being less fat in person. Thank you. Now everyone wants to know how tall I am. I am taller than Danny DeVito and shorter than Shaquille O'Neal, but you're going to have to meet me in person to find out the exact height. So there you go. I do want to say one thing, and I haven't planned this out for not even a nanosecond. It's just, I was tired last night and I got back, and Twitter is a wonderful, when you're tired after Crime Con and you've had 3 20-something hour days after a 2-week book tour, and you go to Twitter, don't ever do that, because that's what I did last night. And it was a cesspool. I don't know how else to say it. And what I do want to say is, everyone handles things in a different way. I actually wrote that in the very, very end of my book in the acknowledgments. No one knows what's going through anybody's mind, really. And no one knows how anybody feels about the victims in certain cases. We all deal with that in different ways. So no one should be so self-righteous on Twitter as to tell someone else how to deal with a victim. Victims and how people react to those situations. It's a very personal reaction. So that's my 2 cents. And in my book, I wrote, let's be kind to everyone. And I wasn't very kind to everybody on Twitter last night. So for that, I do apologize. But the other thing is, if you're going to attack me, I'm going to attack back. I'm not going to sit there like a little sheep with my hands on my behind. So anyway, enough of that. On to John O'Keefe. He, of course, is the fallen Boston police officer. January 29, 2022, he is found dead on the front lawn of Brian Albert's property. Brian Albert and a lot of the people there are part of law enforcement. I don't need to tell you, for those following the case, many people believe something smells rotten in Canton, and others believe Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe either intentionally or unintentionally. But that's what we're about to discuss tonight. And there was court today. Here with us, the man of reason, Detroit criminal and civil defense attorney, Brother Counsel, whose first name is Martin, but he has a YouTube channel under the same banner, Brother Counsel. Far smarter than myself, and puts together cogent YouTube pieces. And by the way, he told me he did a whole rap on it. I'm just finding out. I'm gonna have him explain that in 1 minute, but I'm gonna go watch it because this is a complicated case. Next up, Lauren Conlin, who I met at CrimeCon. She's a podcaster and reporter with a focus on true crime and pop culture. You can find her as a contributing reporter on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Sure, you've heard of Nancy Grace, as well as her weekly podcast, The Outlier. She also is a features writer for Static Media, where she writes about celebrity gossip. And Carm called Lauren, by the way, in my book, she called the breakup of Bennifer, otherwise known as Ben Affleck, and Jennifer Lopez. And it's not off again, but I get me some TMZ alerts on that every day.
Love it.
Yes. And then we've got Rob D'Amico, a Jersey native, more importantly, former military, also retired FBI, a special agent already. I can hear people in the YouTube sphere going, "Oh boy, he's going to be on the side of the Alberts," and you know that it was not a conspiracy, but we're going to see what Rob says. He also runs and owns Sierra One Consulting, and there you go. We've gotten it all in. Today there was court, and we finally got to some forensic experts. I'm going to start with the attorney on this case. Brother, first, tell us what you did on your channel, because it sounds interesting, and what do you make of some of today's testimony?
Yeah, well, sure. So my last video that I posted on this trial was really the full 18 days of trial, recapped the entire thing, all the arguments one way and the other, and I did it all with under an hour. So if you want to get completely caught up with all the important facts and arguments and evidence and testimony, certainly you should go check that out. You'll have the entire 18 days of trial recapped for you on a plate right there for you.
I got to endorse that hour that you did. It was amazing. The pace was incredible. And I sat there, and the little things I missed on certain days, you caught up and picked up, and it wasn't biased. It was just straight up the truth. So yeah, I watched that today.
Well, by the way, real quick, brother, let me hop in here. This is Analytical Blarney, AB, a friend of the show here. Look at this. This takes a woman to write this. Joel, I recently experienced online backlash. If you haven't experienced it yet, you're going to with this case. I can guarantee you that. And I can't imagine all you go through. I'll be more tolerant of your complaints. Maybe we'll call them concerns. My mom says I complain too much. I've been hard on you at times, and I'm sorry. I support you, and this is the best community on the planet. I appreciate that very much. It takes a big person to say that, and I do appreciate that very much. But go ahead, brother. Let's get back to what you compiled there, because I think it's important for everybody. Take a look at it.
Right. So, I mean, essentially, it's really recapping the entire 18 days of trial in case you've missed it, all the important arguments one way or the other, some of the important evidence. Obviously, you can't encapsulate everything in 1 hour. There's a lot of nuances and a lot of different testimony, a lot of arguments to be made. And if you want a real deep down breakdown, you can go through each of my daily recaps, and that really gives a deep dive into each person's testimony and arguments that could be made one way or the other. But that was that last one, just to kind of like catch everybody up. We only had 1 day of trial last week, so everyone's kind of, been following the Karen Reed trial, been just sitting on their hands or checking out some other stuff. So it was a great time to, sit back, digest, and rethink all the evidence that came in. So I thought that was a good exercise. It was helpful for me to get everything straight. There's a lot of moving parts, many people involved in this trial, and to keep everything straight it could be challenging. So, but yeah, certainly you should go check that out. In terms of today, I think one of the most important parts, and this is kind of like the boring part of the trial, the forensics, are going through all these different pieces of evidence that they collected and they labeled a certain way, and it's introducing documents, and it's what I call the boring part of the trial. And so it's just admitting all of those pictures and pieces of evidence, and it's kind of tedious. But I thought that there were some interesting things to think about today that came out. Was, for example, some of the things that Alan Jackson brought out in cross-examination was the fact that there was a piece of glass that was located on the bumper. and it was not embedded in the bumper. It was just kind of just sitting there. And the idea here, which from the prosecution, you would imagine that the idea here is that that's glass from the broken taillight, right? Well, that car was towed about 60 miles in a blizzard. And the chances of that glass just sitting on that bumper without being knocked off in the windy, blizzardy, storm that was going on while it's being towed is a great question. Something certainly that the jurors should be thinking about. So, and also there's a piece of hair that was also, again, not embedded near the taillight. It was just kind of just sitting there. And how did that just stay on through the 60 miles in blizzard conditions? So that was, at least some of the more exciting parts of the trial today.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be less exciting from a dramatic standpoint, but it's going to be way more important, in my opinion. But Rob D'Amico, what about that? Everyone's talking about that piece of taillight just sitting on the bumper and the hair. Now, dare I ask? First of all, I'm going to put this comment up, and I'm going to get Twitter just for putting this comment up. Karen Reed is guilty. Evidence proved it today. Don't worry, I'll put up some stuff that's completely contrary. This one,
I want to hear from these people though, because I'm like, did we watch the same thing? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and Lauren, I'm definitely getting your bird's eye view of this amazing panel of guests. There's no debating that. Rob D'Amico, you on this show said you don't think John O'Keefe could have been killed from a car going in reverse, even at a speed of 25, even plus miles per hour. This glass, the only way I could rationalize the glass sitting there, and this is where I'm going to get the hate mail, and this hair, maybe it was frozen, stuck to the bumper. That's the only possibility. What do you make of these important pieces of evidence that we're learning about today?
So I absolutely think, it is that one thing that you look at and you're like, how in the world did that happen? Now, I have seen things happen that get crazy, but the prosecution has to prove that. Like there has to be something in there. Like he had it. Like I would have gone out and done a test. Like freeze a piece of glass and tow a car to even see it, because it just doesn't make sense. And when they talk about things like that don't make sense, and why they didn't like do the car at the scene and everything else, you have to overcome that. And I don't think they did. I think when the prosecution, again, he has that long drawn out, like all the procedures they went through, which I don't think are as important in this. I think the important thing is, like, what did they get out of this? What is, I didn't even see any links from some of these to anything good that would say, oh, all the other stuff that I've heard that doesn't make sense, this overrides that. And I'm not seeing that with the physical evidence in this part. And then some of the physical evidence, as they talked about, a piece of hair and a piece of glass, making it that far in a blizzard at a tilt. What kind of car, was it on a flatbed that they took it on? Did they drape something over it? That wasn't explained. And the defense, when they went through their points, their tempo and the ability to go one after another, I think was very, very influential on the jury, because it was just one after another. The pace was good. It explained it, and they went to the next one and why that didn't make sense and the questions on it. So I think they have a large burden to prove, and I don't think they're doing it with this physical evidence.
Yeah. Brother Counsel, very quick to you before we get back to Lauren. You mentioned it. Only one day of court last week. One day. It was Memorial Day weekend. They had one day. And then this week, no court tomorrow, no court Friday. Why? I mean, this is such a high-profile case. Why are there such limited days? Why are they taking so many days off?
Yeah, I don't know. She didn't explain on the record. I don't know. What I can guess, just from being in trial myself, is that sometimes the judges have to take up other matters. There are other cases on the docket besides this one that's being tried. Sometimes one day could be devoted to a motion day. It can be, just a day of conferences. So there can be a judge's meeting. I mean, it's the possibilities are endless. So, but all the time when you're in trial, you should expect that you'll have either a full day off, a half day off, or just for random no reason, you'll have a day or two off. So she didn't explain on the record, but it's completely normal.
And by the way, so here are the comments to counterbalance what we were just talking about. Brooklyn Janet with a super chat. No broken bones on the body. Chief Investigator Proctor, friends with the Albert family, and he's under investigation. First, in connection with this, first responder Albert never came out of the house after loud sirens. And then another one, This is all planted evidence, and he wasn't hit by a car. I tweeted out something last week. I forget the exact wording, but it was basically, law enforcement people like Rob D'Amico always tell me there's no such thing as coincidences. And here, just way too many weird things going on between the butt dials, the connections, this thing not coming out with the sirens. I mean, there's so much smoke here. And I said, something's going on. I mean, there is some sort of a cover up going on, but unless you were in that house that night, we don't know exactly what it is. When I posted that, Turtle Boy tweeted right back at me and said, I told you all this in August. And he did tell me a bunch of it, but what really happened that night, yet to be determined. Lauren Conlin, apologies. It's usually always ladies first, but got a little sidetracked here. So please forgive me. And what's your bird's eye view of this case so far? By the way, I met Lauren for the first time. She's a really amazing investigative reporter, and she is never short of an opinion. So go ahead.
No, you're right. I do have an opinion on this, but for me, I don't want to speculate here. I'm not here to speculate what I think happened to him. I'm now just kind of tearing this apart, putting myself in the shoes of the jury. And right now, like for today, example, I saw a couple people tweet that it was a great day for the prosecution. And I'm like, how was it a great day for the prosecution? Because again, I'm on the jury and I'm watching him speak to Maureen Hartnett, I think her name was, the forensic scientist. And I'm like, what are you getting at here? Are you trying to prove that, his sleeve, the right arm, are you trying to prove that that's glass marks? Are you trying to prove that that's not dog bites? Is it an SUV? Is it, I don't know what you're getting at. I have no clue where he's going with this. And again, with what Rob said, Alan Jackson, he's succinct. He's to the point. I see what he's trying to do. He pinpoints the hair. He's basically saying, hey, don't you see that this car went from point A to point B back to point A? There's a lot going on here, and there's too many holes. The prosecution at the very beginning of this, in their opening statements, they should have addressed the fact that we are going to see a whole bunch of witnesses who have been, quote unquote, accused by the defense or in the court of public opinion. This is what you're going to see. And he didn't really say that here. He just listed a whole bunch of names. He confused everybody. And what I'm seeing and what I saw with all of these witnesses is nobody really spoke about Karen Reed, right? No one actually spoke about how she could have hit John with her car. It was all about them and what they didn't do. And I felt that throughout all of those witnesses, Karen was completely forgotten, and so was John. So, I mean, sorry, that was all over the place. But again, it's like I feel like I could pick out so many things right now, and not necessarily about who I think did it, but what I think is not being proven here.
Yeah, and we'll get into. I have some of the specifics of the testimony, which I watched all day today, and we'll get into that in a moment. Rob, to you, again, stressing that Rob is an amazing man, mainly because he's from Jersey, like myself. This is a question that keeps coming up. Where is the blood not in the snow? What do you make of that? I mean, Rob, this is not a typical crime scene in so many ways because there's a blizzard going on, and there's no question the investigation was botched because they were using a snowblower at one point. But what do you make specifically about the blood or lack of blood evidence? Could it be that it was just absorbed somehow into the snow? I don't know anything about evidence collection, especially in a blizzard. What do you think is going on here?
I think two things. I think one, the prosecution can say it was blown off by the snowstorm as they were moving the car, but then the glass and the hair weren't, type of thing. That's why there's no blood on it. I find it troublesome, especially if the damage of a car backing up is enough to kill a person, that there's going to be that transfer of blood, the DNA. If the snow melts, the blood's still in the ground. I mean, it doesn't go away, and there's ways to lift that and do that if you do it properly. I think what you have here is two things happening. You have a totally horribly run crime scene, And then I think you have something going on as far as a cover up of something. I don't know exactly what, and the jury doesn't really have to understand exactly what. But the fact that all the witnesses all have these strange butt dials and butt dials back and all these other things that are going on. But I also think, I don't know if the investigators were in on that, the whole thing. I think it was just a really bad investigative job that they did. And then you put the two together and it just looks unbelievably bad. And the prosecution isn't taking the offense and putting it into terms that they really understand. Like, there's a bunch of comments about, oh, the glass could freeze there. Well, the prosecution needs to explain that then, and not just give the defense the ability to say, well, what happened to it? How did it get through 60 miles in a blizzard on a tow truck? The prosecution needs to explain things like that and say, well, couldn't it have done this, to some of these people? Even if it gets, objected and sustained, you're still putting it out there to a point. You're putting that thought in there, and they're not doing that. So I think, like I said, I am so interested in why all these witnesses are just being caught lying and this craziness, because I do think it leads to something else. But I don't think exactly the sloppiness of the investigation is exactly tied to it. I think it could be both separate, but it's supporting the defense in like a huge way.
Rob, is it possible? I'm sorry, Martin. Is it possible, Rob D'Amico, that you've got dirty cops here? I hate that expression, but dirty cops here, and a woman who either intentionally or accidentally hit this person, and maybe the dirtiness that is surrounding these police officers is something unrelated that they just didn't want and still don't want the public to know about? Is that a possibility?
You can't take any possibility out of this. I have seen the craziness on so many sides of so many cases that you can't take that possibility out. The probability, I think, gets to the point where you're looking at it, like that can be in question. But I'll never say never on any criminal case. And I think everyone here agrees with it, because you've seen things that, again, I always say I can catch someone lying, but figuring out why they're lying is the harder part. Like, that's one of those things that comes up, like, okay, they're lying about it, but are they lying about it because they're trying to hide this or something else?
Really well put there. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to say, Rob, can you just clue me in on this? Because this is what I want to know. You've got a crime scene, you've got a fatality. In your experience, what's with closing down and keeping a crime scene open to anybody? And I'm sorry, not closing it down in 3 hours? It's a fatality. It's fatal. I don't get that. And then as soon as police might figure out there's a car involved, wouldn't that constitute an accident reconstruction by the state immediately?
Oh, there's so many things. I think I remember one comment saying they cleaned this crime scene quicker than I cleaned my kitchen. Whoever made that comment, I laughed at, because again, and it's the fatality of a cop. That's the one thing. Like, normally when a cop is killed, the resources come out in trillions to make it right, to get this. And all of a sudden in this one, you got leaf blowers, you got red Solo cups, you got, the crime scene in 3 hours. And
well, you've also got clothing that was kept apparently until March 14th. That's another thing that we obviously didn't touch upon yet. We didn't get there, but I'm like, why would they keep it for so long?
Again, it's those unknowns. And I think that's the sloppy part in some of it. Were they clued in on exactly what happened? Or was it just a police department that did not have great procedures for these crime scenes? But when you think of that, you just turn it over to state police and let the burden be on them, because they have the resources, they have the people to come out. If they called state police and say, hey, we have a death of a fellow police officer, we need your best, I guarantee there would have been, a State Department trailer, CSI trailer, and every piece of resources that they ever wanted.
I can see Brother's big brain processing all of this in real time.
Yeah, I want to hear what he has to do.
Brother, real quick here. Erica says that the piece of glass don't fit. You must acquit, obviously. A throwback to OJ Simpson. How can you make a judgment when all the evidence hasn't come out? That's from Jersey Jew. That's a little too rational. And then look at this. Look at this, brother. Joel, you cannot be serious. I thought you were a man with reason. And then this one, brother, you can please feel free to make the remark you're about to, but address this as well from Cat's Pajamas. Lally did not put anything in context. He, of course, is the assistant district attorney. It was weird. It's almost like he's doing it on purpose.
Okay, so, and I also want to respond to some of the things that Lauren mentioned. So we have to understand how, there's a certain presentation of evidence, and you can't argue your case the entire trial. And you're limited as a prosecutor, certainly on direct examination, what type of questions you're allowed to ask and what type of information you're allowed to elicit. So what I always tell people is that, especially when the prosecution is putting on their case, is that you have to be patient. And a perfect example about this, by the way, is the Michelle Troconis trial. If anyone has been following that prosecution was every single day was like, how is this all going to come together? Just different pieces of information coming in, and especially there's no opening statements in that case. But after everything came in, and then in closing arguments, they put it all together. Everything made so much sense. So I would just caution everyone that as the prosecution is putting on their case, you may not understand how everything's fitting together, and you may want them to start saying, well, how is Karen Reed involved in all this? You're just talking about yourself. They're not allowed to talk about Karen Reed because a lot of it's speculation, but they are planting, especially if you're watching this as an attorney, you see exactly what they're doing. They're establishing a few different facts with each witness. So, for example, one of the things they have to establish is that Karen Reed was in the driver's seat. So that's something that they have to establish. And they established with a number of different witnesses that Karen Reed drove to 34 Fairview and she was parked in front of the house. And then another thing is that she didn't come into the house. And then, so they have to establish step by step, and sometimes it's painstakingly slow. And people want to see smoking guns. They want to see, show me your case already. But especially in a case like this, when there's so much different, moving pieces, you have to be patient. And that's why I would agree with whoever.
Honey, I'm patient. I'm watching a bunch of trials, and I'm just saying I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And I also, and I'm not a trial expert, obviously, but neither is the jury. And I just have to wonder, are they following this? Like,
right.
Are they a little bit lost?
You hope you're following everything. You hope they're taking notes. It's sometimes a tedious process, but somebody did make a comment about how you have to wait for all the evidence to come in. And that's something that I say on my channel. Look, I'm going to poke holes in the arguments. I'm going to talk about the evidence as they come in, but that doesn't mean I'm making any decision yet, because I've got to see everything come in. So until I see everything come in, I'm not going to jump on any side of this case. A lot of things seem confusing. Sometimes it can be all the way at the end of the presentation of the prosecution's case, and then boom, everything fits together and it's a smoking gun.
So you liked his opening statement? You thought he nailed that? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, I'm not saying that about the opening statements. I think that his opening statement could have certainly been better. And I happen to, yeah, no, anyone who's been watching my channel understands how I approach opening statements. And it was certainly something left to be desired. The defense, I thought, did a good job in the opening statements. But yeah, I think you should have painted a little bit more of a picture about what's going on. I don't know, to your point, like if you should have gone through each of the Alberts and McCabe's and say that how they're not involved, and I have evidence that they're not involved. He could have said something to the effect of, you're going to be hearing evidence about how possibly there was this tremendous, huge conspiracy and this cover up, and maybe if you believe that we never landed on the moon, maybe you believe that also. He could have said things like that, and maybe got objected to, whatever. He could have, certainly could have done an opening statement. I agree with you that he could have done some other things, and I certainly would have done that also. But I'm just telling everybody that even when there's no opening statement, like the Michelle Troconis case, each day of evidence and each day of testimony all weave together one big picture. And at the end of the day, at the end of the trial, the prosecution put everything together, and it was like a slam dunk. So, I know I know everyone's like, and there's so many problems with some of the evidence that's coming out that we're pointing out, and there could be some real serious problems. And by the way, if you're sitting as a juror, even if at the end of the day, the prosecution maybe proved their case, but if there's some major questions about this investigation, you may say, I'm not voting for guilty because there's just so many problems with the investigation, even if technically they would have satisfied their burden. So I'm not discounting anything. But I am certainly of the opinion that, because I'm a lawyer, that I want to wait till I see everything. And once I have everything in front of me, then I'll be able to make a more educated decision.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
by the way, we hope that the jurors are doing that. Rob, I'm gonna let you jump in right here. So this is Udi or Audi Canisto who was coming at me a moment ago. And I actually brought this point up that they're making right now. Basically, you can concoct this kind of conspiracy out of every homicide. I was feeling that way at the beginning of this trial, but not anymore. A hint for every defense lawyer. I even asked this question at one point to a defense attorney saying, are they going to now, is it was to Peter Ellicott, Boston attorney. I said, is every defense team now just going to go after the police department? He said, look, they've been doing that for 30 or 40 years. But Rob D'Amico, this, and you know this firsthand, they come after your investigations. But this, there's too much smoke here. I mean, this is not a typical reasonable doubt because of a flubbed investigation. This is one thing after the next, is it not?
I think so. And I think what he was talking about, though, is the jury is on a roller coaster. And like at one point they're really into it and the prosecution's doing good, and they're downhill, and then all of a sudden the defense comes in and has a great cross, and then you got to get over that burden, and it's up and down. And he did talk about at the end, if they can sum it up, it's like the bottom of the ninth, and your team's coming back, so to speak. But it's the more and more craziness it happens, I think the burden gets higher and harder to make that closing argument that sums it all up, because there's so much here. And then also the same fact is, like, I think they proved their case, but then again, it was so sloppy and there were so many inconsistencies that someone's just going to find it hard to believe or just put in that vote for guilty. Like me, I always want to side on the error of, I would rather have an innocent person on the street than a non-innocent person in jail. And that's coming from a cop. That's coming from someone like, it is my burden to prove the case, and I have to do it beyond a reasonable doubt, because I never want me or someone I know or love to go to jail for something they didn't do. And I'd rather have it the other way. So it's really tough, but that jury is on this roller coaster. And I just think it's gotten so, like, the prosecution has allowed that mound to get so tall, it's going to be hard to overcome at the end with a great closing statement, especially after his opening one. You're like, okay, he struck out, I think. Can he really come back on, down 0-2 and hit one out?
I just don't think he has it in him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
From what I've seen so far. And just to be clear, I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that Karen is innocent or guilty here. I was strictly speaking about the trial and what I've seen so far. And what I've seen so far, I have not seen anything prove that she hit him.
Yeah, and by the way, just to give you an idea about, like, stylistically, generally speaking, my experience, prosecutors are very matter of fact. They're not these passionate pleas to justice type of advocacy, which you see out of the defense attorney. A lot of times you see a lot more color, a lot more personality from the defense attorneys, and they make arguments much stronger. And the prosecution will get up and say, look, evidence says this, and the other thing, so you got to find guilty. So just in terms of style, a lot of times you do find that the prosecution is much more cut and dry, not as exciting to listen to, not as flamboyant or whatever. And
but most defense attorneys are former prosecutors, so or a handful of them, and Alan Jackson was a former prosecutor, to my knowledge. So
yeah, well, the way that works, actually, Lauren, is that a lot of times you start.
No, just kidding.
First of all, Alan Jackson, I think is doing a great job. I mean, as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer, I'm watching, and I've made some different pointers here and there, but overall, I think he's doing a great job. But a lot of times you'll start off your career as a prosecutor. You want the trial experience. You want to get up on your feet. You want to argue. But it's not really in your DNA to be a prosecutor. You're much more cut out to be a defense attorney. So a lot of attorneys I know start off prosecution. You want to get trial experience. You want to get out there. You want to do some stuff, So, and then that will just be the stepping stone to what you're going to do in the future. So that's why you do find a lot of defense attorneys just started off as prosecutors.
I'm gonna go,
brother. Real quick, brother. What do you think? Tell me, what do you think Alan Jackson's biggest strength is? I mean, I agree that he's doing a good job. My concern with him, or my thought with him, is that maybe a Canton, Mass jury, or their dedum, to be specific, is not gonna, he's not gonna appeal to them because he's a slick LA. criminal defense attorney. But what do you think he's doing so well?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, to that point, and I've spoken about this in a number of different videos on a number of different trials, is that when you're going to bring in this big city attorney to a small town, you always are running that risk of the jury just not being able to connect to the jury. You can be, and a great example I think of this is, which we're going to see soon, probably in the Alec Baldwin trial, which is going to be coming up, I think, soon in July, maybe. I forgot exactly.
We also saw brother. We saw that in the Adelson case. I think. I don't think Daniel Rathbaum fit in with the Tallahassee jurors.
Yeah, well, he claims he's also a Tallahassee guy, but certainly when you're going to bring a guy from New York City, Manhattan, or you're going to bring somebody from LA, you are running that risk. You are. I think Alan Jackson is a likable attorney. Again, I don't know how the jury is viewing him. And a lot of times I talk about on my channel that if you're an attorney going into a strange town that you're not familiar with, you should certainly go there before, scout it out, sit in the bars, sit in the pancake houses, see what people talk about, see what the news reporting is there, see what's important to the people there. And then when you get up and talk to them, you can relate a lot better to them. So I don't know if Alan Jackson did that. I'm not looking at it like that. I don't know the dynamic of Canton. I don't know Massachusetts. I don't know how that's going to connect with him. But what I'm watching in terms of his cross-examination, in terms of how he presents himself, how he presents the arguments, how he controls the witness. And it's really a clinic for a trial attorney who wants to learn how to control a witness. A lot of times you'll notice he'll say, that wasn't quite my question. And there's a way to do it without sounding like you're taking the witness on. You're trying to basically control the witness and redirecting the witness into what you're saying. And that way you're controlling it, but you don't want to come across as a controller, right? So it's a fine line, and he's really doing that well. He's making his points straight to the point. He's getting what he needs to out of the witnesses, and he's sitting down. A lot of times attorneys will go on and on and on. I'll bring another example. In the Michelle Trocona's case, you had the defense attorney there. A lot of times, I don't know if anyone's watched that, but the defense attorney a lot of times will just go on and on and on about some of the evidence that was, and making, a point here, a point there. It's really not going to win you the case. You always got to think in the defense attorney, you always think, as any attorney, is this going to help me win the case or not? Am I just going to score a point here, or is this actually going to help me win the case? And that will change the way you approach the case. And what I'm finding with Alan Jackson is that he has a goal here, and he's working towards that goal. And whether it's controlling a witness, whether it's what points I'm going to argue on cross-examination, what points I'm going to allow the witness not to answer and then maybe come back to cross-examination. There is a lot of lawyering going on that some other lawyers would appreciate that maybe regular people wouldn't. And some of the things that I do on my channel is point out what he's doing. But yeah, I mean, there's really a lot to learn from what he's doing.
I think he treated the witnesses today very, they're state people doing their job. He treated them with respect. He talked to them well. Right. It was different than when he was talking to the other witnesses that he was. But I think it was very much he planned that to show what you just said, that it's a respectful thing. I'm just going to kind of give you some questions that I know you can't answer because they're not there.
Right. There's a fine line between controlling the witness and I'm sorry, Lauren, I keep talking.
No,
Lauren, let me throw this Lauren, let me throw this to you from Rosemary Gallagher.
Yeah.
It's always the host's fault when that happens. Why are so many people so afraid? Everything in the world is my fault. Why are so many people so afraid to admit that it might be a cover-up? Cops have done this many times. Lauren, why do you think there's this inherent resistance to that? Although in this case, I don't see it. I feel like there's more people who believe it's a cover-up in many ways than who think that Karen Reed potentially hit John O'Keefe. What's your response?
Yeah, I mean, going back to the whole defense theory, I personally don't think it has to be a 50-person cover-up or conspiracy. I'm still not fully convinced there's this whole conspiracy here, as I said. I just think that the defense is doing a great job of pointing out why these witnesses might not be super credible based on his line of questioning, based on their answers. And also it's not about I don't think it's about people being afraid. It's just that, look, I mean, as a prosecutor would say, the simplest answer is usually the answer, right? Am I right, Martin? Come on, tell me. Is that right? Yeah. So it's
that's Occam's razor. Yes, you are right.
Yeah. I mean, so it's I don't think they're necessarily afraid of that. I think it's just about finding out what this information is that these people could be hiding. And I think that if you look at some of the witness statements and just little things like Matt McCabe referring to John Keefe as the guy. The guy never went in the house. He's distancing himself from John, from their friendship, from whatever it is. And then was it Higgins? No, sorry, Albert saying, exactly, right? Exactly. And it's like, man, this is your friend. This is your friend who was found deceased in a horrible way. And so I'm sitting here just like, I don't necessarily want to push any type of conspiracy because I don't have proof. But again, don't have proof she hit him. And I'm sensing some information being withheld. So I think a lot of people might be in the same boat as me as well.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Lauren, something, because you talked about opening statements. So remember, the defense's opening statement started off as
Karen Reed was framed.
Karen Reed was framed. So do you think, Lauren, now that you're attacking the prosecution's opening statement, do you think that that was a smart idea for the defense to get up there right away and say this was all one big conspiracy? Why not just say how this has been such a poor investigation? There's so many other things going on. We don't really know what's going on.
Because
I can't tell you
someone told them this. They got a tip that this is what happened, and then they have this Google search at 2:27 a.m. where I think one of the Joel's past guests said this, like, Cellbrite is always the prosecution's friend, and then all of a sudden, in this case, no, you don't listen to Cellbrite. So I think Alan Jackson just went up there and stated their theory. I think that obviously breaking things down, we've seen that it was a pretty piss poor investigation, and that speaks for itself. I think that I think his opening statement was great because this is their defense. So I mean, he's gonna run with it. And again, he didn't make it up. He didn't make it up, right?
Same thing that he went too far saying she was framed and this is the way it happened, because then that kind of puts a burden for you to prove that, even though I think it's subliminal that you have to prove it. I would say, look, I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that these people are lying and you're going to see that, and just leave it to like the burden of proof wasn't met. But I think he may think he's so spot on with what happened that he went, I think, a little bit too far on that, saying this is specifically what happened instead of just leaving it to jurors.
He had to own it. He had to own what they put out there. I mean, I feel like if they didn't own it, that wouldn't look good either, because they're the one that put this forth.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, we're just responding because you said that you don't know if this whole conspiracy happened. You just think it's a bad investigation. So
yes, both. I mean, I'm saying I wasn't there, right? I was not there. So he is telling me this. If I'm on the jury and I'm listening, and this is your defense, this third party cover up, yeah, I'm listening to it. And then I'm also hearing that it's a piss poor investigation, and I'm going to weigh both.
Yeah. Brother Counsel, this question's coming up, and it's a practical one here. Tennis Girl 101, who's awesome, and I met her at CrimeCon. Can anyone speculate on when they think this trial will end? The Commonwealth had like 87 people on their witness list. The defense has like 77 people. Shout out to Tennis Girl 101, who helped us build and break down the booth. We love you, Tennis Girl. Brother Counsel.
Well, the first thing is that just because the witness is listed on your witness list doesn't mean you're going to call that witness. So that's like, understand, so just because they're listed doesn't mean.
So let me put you on the spot. How much longer is the trial going, brother?
So let me tell you. So when they initially said about 6-7 weeks, I think it was, I don't know if they contemplated all these breaks. So I don't know if they assume they're going to take a full break and they're, counting that as part of the 6 weeks or not. But I would assume that we're going to wrap it up with some experts, some medical examiners, and the state's case is going to be over, I would say, probably sometime next week. And then, again, this is all speculation, but that's what I would assume. I don't know how many other experts they can really call, some more DNA experts and forensic experts. And
did you say next week? I missed that. Did you say next week?
I could see it being the state wrapping up their case next week. I could see that, because I don't know how many more experts they can really take up a full day of trial with.
Aside from 33 witnesses left, 33. Yeah. But you said they're not. What's that?
By the way, on their witness list, but it doesn't mean that they're going to actually call them. So
right.
Does anyone know if there are social media therapists that help people through this? Because now Kristen Cure, in all caps, disappointed in you, Joel. Ask Phil and Scott what I don't even know what she's alluding to here, because I've said multiple things here, and I don't think I'm taking a side. By the way, Brother Counsel, someone came at all of us and said, why is this a pro Karen Reed show today? Brother Counsel is my attorney in real life. Brother, please respond to this plaintiff here or defendant.
I mean, this happens a lot when you're analyzing a trial, and this happens certainly on my channel. When I'm pointing out certain weaknesses on one side as opposed to the other, people will say, oh, you're on that side, you're on the other side. But that's not how it is. We're talking about the evidence, we're talking about the testimony. So obviously we're going to point out weaknesses and arguments to be made and why the investigation looks bad. It doesn't mean that we're on that side. We're just pointing out things that we noticed and observed. And, you know, again, like I said in the beginning of this video today, I'm open as evidence comes in. I'm going to evaluate it and rethink everything. I mean, that's how you have to do. You're supposed to keep an open mind. That's what the judge tells the jury every single, in jury instructions. You got to keep an open mind till the end of the trial. And a lot of times the defense will say, please, I'm asking you all, keep an open mind. Even though the prosecution is going to go on and on and on, and it's going to look really bad, you got to keep an open mind. So pointing out weaknesses and arguments and evidence and testimony, that doesn't mean we're on one side over the other. Although I'm not sure if Lauren will agree that she's not on one side.
I mean, no, I'm just, like I said, I'm waiting for someone to prove that this happened the way that the prosecution said it happened. That's what I'm waiting for. I think before you're going to put someone in prison for life for murder. You better be very, very sure. And you have to prove it. I mean, like, I don't know if I hate saying this because I also like, I do feel like just so bad for John's family and that this has become such a sideshow circus. And it's tough. But again, I feel like just me saying that no one's proven this to me and that Lally is brutal has made me such an enemy to so many people that I'm like, fine. I don't know what else to say. It's tough. Like he hasn't proven anything to me and neither have his experts. Even talking about her BAC last week, Karen's BAC, you've got a range. Oh yeah, it's probably from like 0.135 to 0.292. What? That's a really big discrepancy if that's the case, right? I mean,
yeah.
You feel me.
No, I hear this comment here resonates with me. I don't know if it does with others, but I agree with Rob. There was clearly a wretched investigation, but I don't know why. I know that I'm seeing and hearing deception in a lot of witnesses from that night, but I don't know why. The people who obviously think this is a cover-up are screaming at their screens right now, going, this guy, Joel, is a complete idiot. What do you mean he doesn't know why? But, I in that regard, I'm with Lauren, and I really want to see all things. And I don't think that a cover-up is mutually exclusive from Karen Reed also potentially having committed a crime. Again, it could be something completely out of left field that they're trying to cover up. People have things on their phones that they don't want to see, and maybe they were up to something really bad, but it wasn't involved. We just don't know. One thing that is clear is that there is snow. That is true. Although some people might argue that with climate change, I guess. But Martin Smallwood, by the way, shout out to him. He's been all over the Suzanne Morphew case. She was the woman, the mom of two who went missing out of Colorado. And then I don't think anyone ever expected authorities to find her remains.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that case is going to heat back up. And a lot of people think Barry Morphew is going to eventually go back on trial. He was set to go on trial. It never happened. Okay, so here we go. There's a missing bell. I'm going to read some tweets here right now that are going to get everyone riled up. Everyone on every side. So except for this one, maybe. But I was hanging out with Bob Mata of Defense Diary. Shout out to Bob and his beautiful wife, Allie, who are both awesome. I could actually go on vacation with those people. I don't say that about a lot of people, but they're a great couple, and they've got a great podcast. This was Bob Mata's tweet earlier today. Rob D'Amico, I'm going to send this your way. The tweet says the following. We finally have laid eyes on John O'Keefe's hoodie that he was wearing that evening. This is the front he has pictures, which we were supposed to have. We'll see if we get them up. This is the front of the hoodie. And the second pic has evidence markers indicating where there was damage to the hoodie. The third being a close-up of some of the damage. I am eagerly awaiting a Commonwealth witness to explain to me, as if I were a 5-year-old, how these rips and tears were caused by John O'Keefe being struck by an SUV. So there's evidence photos admitted today of his sweatshirt and his shirt, and there are rips and tears. And Bob, who was a criminal defense attorney, wants to know how that would have happened from a strike from a car. Rob, is that usual, unusual? To me, if you get struck by a car, you could have rips and tears, but is that odd in your estimation?
I think it is. I think everyone just pictures the car hitting a person, and but did she back up and bring him into a bunch of bushes that would have torn that or something? Or did she pin him against something? Did he get dragged under the car? Like, all those things can cause rips and tears. So, but when you really look at, like, you're backing up, again, I say backing up in a snowstorm fast enough to be able to hit someone and kill them with just a clean shot to them, I think is very difficult. And if that was the case, you wouldn't see the same rips and tears if she ran over him and dragged him, or she put him through a bunch of wooded area when she hit him. Like, all those things have to come into play, because that's not the normal what you see. So again, prosecution would have to kind of paint that picture of how those got there from something that they're saying happened. But if it's just you backed him up and hit him, and again, he hit his head and died from that and exposure, you wouldn't see those normal tears on it. But then again, did she have a trailer? And I'm just surmising that. I don't think she had. Did she have a trailer hitch that caught the sweatshirt and pulled it, or something along those lines? Mm-hmm. You have to paint that picture. But a normal hit from a car, I don't think would cause those.
What about dirt and what would we see more of that, do you think, on this sweatshirt? And there have been people asking online, was the sweatshirt washed? Would there have been more blood? Well, we know that it didn't go into evidence until a month and a half later, or something like that. And I mean, again, we might have to wait for the medical examiner, right, to obviously see John's arm, see what went on. But I still have a lot of questions on that as well. So I'm with Bob. I want to be talked to like a 5-year-old. Explain all of this to me.
Yeah, there was a suggestion today in one of the cross-examination that perhaps he was dragged underneath the car. Like, he asked one of the forensic witnesses, scientists, was there any indication that John was dragged underneath the car? And one of them actually did look underneath the car, and she said she couldn't say one way or the other, meaning she didn't know. Definitely not from her look did it look like positively that John was dragged underneath the car. Yeah. It's hard to imagine. She's a petite woman, whatever. Karen's a petite person, and John O'Keefe was 6'2", 200 something pounds. And that if he was knocked unconscious and then she went out of her car and dragged him like to the flagpole, I can't imagine that.
I didn't hear that. Oh gosh.
I don't know what else. How did he end up there? The only other way he ended up there was the car.
And maybe called. So he was so injured, but he started trying to call the front door. That's the only way I can explain it, because she didn't drag him. But I do remember her like trying to define undercarriage. He got through that and asked if he looked under it, and he definitely was. But that was on the prosecution side, wasn't it? Or no? So
cross-examination.
Yeah, it's cross-examination. So he's kind of trying to throw that out there now, like, hey, did you see anything? Because normally, like on the undercarriage, if you drag someone, you would find things from the person, clothing or whatever, and she said no. She looked under there, but didn't see anything.
Lauren, one of the things that's interesting, I mean, you and I are not attorneys, but we're kind of professional observers as journalists. Mm-hmm. By the way, did you see that? The COE goes, whoops, I'll have those photos for you in 4 minutes. It was less than 4 minutes, but I just want to say as a side note, you all know I like to digress. In my next life, I want to come back as the COE. In her world, it is all rainbows and unicorns. She falls asleep faster than Fred or Ethel. Before her head hits the pillow, she's out cold. She's dreaming of lilies in a bed of flowers. And I'm up worrying about how I'm going to take care of my 3 kids for the rest of my life, physically sick to my stomach. Her, not a worry in the world. I think she forgot she had the one job to put on these sweatshirt photos, and she said, "Whoops, I'll be back in 4 minutes." So, COE, I do hope we can trade places. In Hebrew, it is called the Olam Haba, and the world to come. So, in that world, I will switch places with you. But we are looking here now at the evidence photos. This is the hoodie he was wearing, and you can see these tears. Rob D'Amico, now that we have the photos up, you can see these little arrows and stuff. And this is what Bob Mott of Defense Diaries was tweeting out. Does this, just at first blush, does this look to you like someone who was hit by a car or someone that was potentially in a fist fight? I don't know. I don't have the experience.
I don't say car. I've been in lots of fist fights as a bouncer in college, and I don't remember ever tearing that much. But the defense, the dog attack, well, that to me that makes more probable sense just looking at that photo than a car hitting someone or someone getting in a fight with another human, like you're punching back and forth. It looks like it's a tear from something. Again, the more reasonable thing looking at that is a dog attack. It makes more sense. So again, it's not one of those things that you can just easily point to on the prosecution side. Say, yeah, this happened from a car accident, from getting backed into, and again, when you get to the actual cause of death, what was the cause of death that did this? And that again, I look at the sweatshirt and I don't see getting hit by a car. Unless you're dragged under it. If they proved it was dragged under it, I could see something along those lines.
There's no cure. Real quick, Lauren, there's no cure for Kristen when it comes to me. Must move to another channel. Joel is too biased. Here's my publicly facing comment. Kristen, I hope you will reconsider. We love having you here, and I'd hate to see you go. This is what I will say to the COE later out loud. See ya, wouldn't want to be ya. I can't please everyone. And if you think that this is too biased, I have no idea what you're even talking about, to be honest, because I'm literally asking questions of best guests and trying to figure out what they are thinking. I'm not even infusing my own thoughts. And when I am, I'm telling you, I'm basically utterly confused. So what you are saying is exactly what I'm talking about. Is it starting to irritate me? A little bit. Do I still love Kristen? Yes. Do I know Kristen? No. One thing I did want to ask Lauren, when I was saying that we're kind of professional observers, one of the things I noticed today, very subtle, Paul O'Keefe has been there, but today he slid all the way down on his bench that he's sitting on to have basically a head-on angle of Karen Reed. And he's been glaring at her. I mean, there's some wicked looks coming from the O'Keefe family toward Karen Reed. And I'm just wondering, Lauren, what you make of that, because there's no other way to read it other than the O'Keefes believe that she's responsible.
Yeah, I heard that. The O'Keefes believe that she's 100% responsible, and that John's mother is very close with Jennifer McCabe. I've heard all of that. Thinking about Paul's statement on the stand, though, he didn't say anything malicious towards Karen Reed. He didn't necessarily say anything damning. However, again, from what I've read, we didn't get to see this, but John's niece, I think, maybe said some things about Karen that maybe just didn't fare well for her character. And so, of course, I'm sure John's mother is obviously going to take the side of his niece and her granddaughter, because she was there for a lot of this, their relationship, and not everyone gets along with their mother-in-law. And so, yeah, I can definitely see that the O'Keefes do err on the side that she is guilty 100%. I just want to add one more thing about the sweatshirt. I don't think any of us can really determine what those marks are without seeing John, or without having an expert talk about John's arm and talk about the dimensions of the, the marks, and just, we need more information here. Obviously we can all speculate based on what we see, but I don't think I can make a determination necessarily until I hear from an expert. However, I do side with Rob in that this is confusing for a hit and run. That's a little confusing.
Yeah. Brother Counsel, Nikki Giannopoulos, the prosecution is trying to prove everyone in the house is innocent rather than proving Karen Reed is guilty. Any veracity to this claim in this comment?
Well, we know that in the back of the prosecution's mind, or maybe in the front of their mind, the defense's case is going to be that everyone there was all one big cover up. So obviously they're going to want to bring that point out. But I think people are also getting frustrated because they want a little bit more like what Lauren was saying. They want these people to come out guns blazing against Karen Reed. And it's just not the way it works in court. You can only testify about certain facts that you personally observed and that you were there. So they can only talk about who was in the house, who wasn't in the house, what they saw when they were coming out of the house, what the demeanor was at the waterfall or the hillside or the C.F. McCarthy's. So you're limited in what you're allowed to testify about. So a lot of people, I've heard that comment before that, oh, they're just trying to prove that these people are innocent. Certainly, yeah, that is part of what they're doing, but they're also very limited. You can't get the McCabe's up there and say, why do you think Karen Reed is guilty? You can't do that. The judge is not going to allow that. They can only talk about the facts that they personally observed. So, they can talk about some history and some relationship things like that, but you just can't get, well, what do you think about this? You can't get that. So that's just how the evidence is coming out. And it may feel like, oh, they're being so defensive, but this is just, they're limited by the rules of evidence. And like I said, you got to be patient. You have to see how this all connects together, if it does. So.
RV there yet? Great play on words. John's mother supposedly said you left him there in anger that morning. So maybe they're mad for either theory, aka end result. Their son is gone. So there you go with that. Okay, so this next person, extremely polarizing in this case, but don't worry, I have someone on the other side, so you still can accuse me of being biased both ways instead of not biased. But this one is coming from Jen Koffendorfer, who I know very well, retired FBI, put in many, many years. And Rob, this one is for you as well. She tweeted today, the belt was never taken and the shoe was never lost. There's been talk about it, missing belt for all these days. So she says, it's all been baloney. You don't put a belt on an evidence list because it is not evidence. It is property and stored as such. It's insane that people believe he was beaten to death by 10 or 11 people, dragged or carried without an ounce of trace evidence, and then heaved on their front lawn just before the murderers had sex and looked up basketball scores. Karen Reed and Reed alone is charged with murdering John O'Keefe. P.S. Taillight fragments were embedded in Officer O'Keefe's shirt. 0 biological DNA or dog DNA were on his shirt sleeve. The forensic evidence is overwhelming that she hit him, and his hair and the glass he held was on her bumper. And this is why people do not like Jen Koffendorfer, because she voices her opinion. Rob D'Amico, your response to hearing, that's not my tweet, that's Koffendorfer's. And don't worry, Turtle Boy's tweet's coming right up.
It's law enforcement bias. Like it's one of those things that like she says overwhelming evidence. Like, okay, keep going. It must be coming up because I'm not seeing it. And all these people like I just think a lot of people in law enforcement just go right to believing law enforcement. And having been in it 26 years and starting to see things, and when you first get in there, again, it's I know it's a long stretch to go that like, hey, these people had something to do with his death, but all the other things that these witnesses testified to, and the butt dialing back, and all, like, what in the world was going on that they're covering up on things that are happening like that, and everyone getting rid of their phones and such, where if as a law enforcement officer something happened around my house, I would preserve everything I could to support that law enforcement case. These people are doing everything in the world to not do that. And like, again, you have this bias on how you look at things based on where you came from. and what you've done to everything to get to this point. And everyone on this on this panel has a different opinion because of where they came through in life and what they've seen. And you really have to have, like, Martin has the open mind because he's a lawyer and he's been through all these cases. That's hard to do. I have it from a law enforcement perspective on how to build a case, and when you have to be so strict in how you do it in order to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to put someone in prison, because I've seen wrongfully, people that have been found guilty and I can't imagine being in jail for something they haven't do. So I put that burden on me, especially if I have a bias to get, like, if I didn't like somebody, I would have this overbearing thing that, like, I have to really prove it beyond anything. So I think some of the law enforcement folks, and unfortunately it is the case, it's a brotherhood. I get that. It's tough to be on the street and everything in that. But I'm starting to see now that things have been done wrong. And it's one of those things. I have 4 kids, and, actually, can I say happy Pride Month to a couple of my kids out there?
Yeah.
But
look at this. I will always support Rob, real quick. I will always support Hope 8 Fears message. Happy Pride Month. You are loved. You are accepted. Never forget that. We are very accepting of pride here at STS. If you have a problem with that, then you got a problem with me. Go ahead, Rob D'Amico.
Yeah, I'm glad that came up at the right time. I meant to say that in the beginning for my kids and stuff. But again, it's one of those things that it's a bias that they're looking at. Like, you had a guest on before that said, "Oh, I believe it because I heard it from other cops." Well, geez, if I heard everything at the water cooler, that, like, it's one of those things, like, you got to stand out and say, hey, what is the right thing to look at? And knowing how a crime scene should be done, and leaf blowers and these cups and everything else that comes up. I'm just dumbfounded on some of it. Do I believe all of them were in this cover up? No, I don't. I don't believe that, but there is something being covered up. I don't know exactly what at this point.
Brother Counsel, question for you. There was a comment, and I don't know where it went because we brought up this other comment, but essentially it was saying that the defense here has sullied so many reputations. Will there be some sort of a lawsuit? That's one side of the coin, potentially like a defamation lawsuit. The other side of the coin is, I assume there's going to be these investigations that are ongoing looking into the Alberts and Higgins. I mean, if we find out that there's something nefarious going on, they are in potential serious legal peril, aren't they?
All right, well, let's talk about the lawsuits, because that's what I like to talk about. So defamation is when you say a fact you publish a fact which you know to be false. Okay, that's defamation. If you think that any of these attorneys will say that they knew that this was false, of course the case is done, because they believe Karen Reed. They believe all this. They believe that this is all a big conspiracy and cover up. So defamation is out the door. You're not going to find a lawsuit for defamation. In terms of if this cover up is proven, and the investigation, as we know, is ongoing, if that's proven, there could potentially be civil rights lawsuits potentially. There will be. If Karen Reed is acquitted and it comes back as this was a big cover up, they're going to get sued to wazoo in civil rights, because this is a tremendous civil rights violation if they tried to cover up this crime and pin it on this. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? What type of price would you put on a life in prison? I mean, how many millions of dollars? So, but this is all, speculation at this point. But yeah, there's defamation, no. But in terms of Karen Reed having a lawsuit, if it's all uncovered, yes.
By the way, Brother Counsel, if I'm not saying it's going to happen again, for those who are about to yell at me, huge if Karen Reed was convicted in this case, how much time do you think she would likely serve of the second degree murder charge?
I thought second degree murder, again, it's going to be up to I don't know if there is a required sentence, like a statutory,
like a mandatory
minimum of life in prison, whatever. I think she is potentially facing life in prison. So the judge could do that. I think from what I've seen, I didn't do a deep dive into the actual penalty, but I believe when I looked it up a few weeks ago, what she's being charged with could put her away for life. And again, she's already 43. So, if it's 40 years, that's a life.
But they also did the lesser charge of the vehicular manslaughter, correct? Yeah.
So if she's convicted of vehicular manslaughter, as opposed to the second degree, is the one that they have to beat. The vehicular manslaughter, that's going to be, I didn't look up the penalties for that, but that's obviously going to be a lot less.
Jen and Ken here, they rhyme, and I met Jen recently. Joel, great panel. Did you see Nancy? I did not see Nancy Grace at CrimeCon. I missed Sean Sticks Larkin, who I heard is a giant of a human being from whatever it is, On Patrol Live. I wanted to see him. But Scott Duffy saw everybody, and I'm posting photos. Duffy met everyone from the Friday show, and I'm putting them on my Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. So, and I put up so many things on my Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. Shaky Lou, look at this. Hang in there, Joel. You're being so fair. Thank you. So no shakiness there from Shaky Lou. Okay, Turtle Boy. We all know him. By the way, I got word that Turtle Boy did a show over the weekend, and he used hashtag best guests with one of my guests. But I thought it was actually kind of fun on his part to do that. And he was giving us some shout outs. Some people will say you should never want a shout out from Turtle Boy. Others will say that's cool. But either way, I'll again get heat for saying that. So any which way you slice it, Turtle Boy is at the center of this controversy, and something that truthfully no reporter should ever be. But he is front and center here. He tweeted this out, Rob D'Amico, and then I'm getting back to Lauren. But from Turtle Boy, so we did Coffindoffer, for those keeping score, believes Karen Read is guilty, and now we have Turtle Boy, who believes that Karen Read was framed. He coined the Canton cover-up phrase, I believe. So from Turtle Boy, Rob, here's the tweet. Every piece of evidence presented by the Commonwealth today has just confirmed that the state police planted taillight and a hair in their failed attempt to frame Karen Read. Not a single juror is buying any of this. One guy has his hand in his face. Two are staring at the ceiling. This is the most incompetent prosecution in the history of lawyering. Dun, 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 dun. Rob D'Amico, your response to this?
It's so nice to be able to be so definitive in what people are thinking. That they actually proved that it was planted. Did I think they proved that it wasn't? No. But do I think they proved it was planted? No. Do I think someone looking at the ceiling is thinking the same thing? Or do I think they're like, yeah, this is easily prosecution side? So to be so confirmative of everything is just going in a direction I don't think is there. I mean, do I have certain feelings? Yes. Does he have certain feelings? Yes. Does he know what the jury's thinking? Absolutely not. And does he know that they've proven something? I don't think is credible. Did they prove it? I don't think so, but I don't think they proved it the other way either.
By the way, if I can just jump in for 1 second before you go to Lauren.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Lauren.
Okay.
I'll let you two fight afterwards. Go ahead now, brother.
But, I'll raise the white flag. I can't take Lauren. No, it's funny because people ask me all the time when you're in the middle of a trial. They say, "Oh, how's it going?" Or I think one of your thumbnails like, "Who's winning?" And the answer to that is, I have no idea how it's going, and I have no idea who's winning. I don't know what the jury's thinking about, and I hope they're not making any decisions yet, because I don't want them to make decisions until I get my closing argument. So I have I always tell people I have no idea how it's going. I hope it's going well, and I hope I'm winning, but you just have absolutely no idea what people are thinking.
Yeah, 100%. I hope this is sarcasm from Destiny. Joel, how dare you think differently than me? The audacity of being your own person with your own perspectives. Unsubscribed. Shout out to Dwayne Harris, one of the most genuine people. And by the way, he is from Detroit, as I like to call it. He is always gifting memberships, and he's had some health issues. So, and from what I understand, he does it on like 18 different channels. So, Anyway, Dwayne, I hope you're feeling better and on the mend here. So now we go to Kathy C. And this is, I think, a voice of reason here. We'll get Lauren's response to this. Kathy C, no idea who she is. She's just a tweeter on the platform formerly known as Twitter, now X, like formerly known as Prince. 5 weeks in, and I don't know if Karen Reed did it, if the Alberts did it, if a random person did it. But I know that the police work was shoddy at best. A human being and a police officer killed, and their investigation was a disgrace. How is there supposed to be justice for John O'Keefe? How does this resonate with you, Lauren Conlin?
I literally said this. I literally said this exact statement where I was like, I don't think we're ever going to know exactly what happened that night. I really don't. And just going back to certain statements that I found to be deceptive from witnesses, I will point out, since you guys all think I'm super biased and Karen's innocent, I'll point out one thing that Karen said on the courthouse steps. I don't recall exactly when this was, probably over a year ago. She was asked by a reporter. They said, Karen, did you do it? And her answer was, we all know who did it. We all know who spearheaded this cover up. And that, in deception and statement analysis, that's crowdsourcing. That's not really answering the question. And that's a big red flag. Now, she might have been told by Jackson and Yannetti, don't say a word, don't say anything, we'll handle it. And she just blurted it out. So you could potentially give her a pass, just like you could potentially give the witnesses a pass on the stand who really just want to be believed. They know, or maybe they're going into this thinking, well, 50% of people don't believe me, so I have to work extra hard here to get my point across. But yeah, I'm with, I think Kathy was her name, that wasn't up there. But yeah, it sucks. I really don't see this trial ending with us understanding what actually happened at this pace. But like brother said, we're in the middle of it. So maybe I should just, I should stop making, no, it's true. But I'm just saying, maybe I should stop here thinking it's going one way or another, because you do make a lot of good points. All of a sudden, sure, the medical examiner could come out and just, they could, just basically make me completely say, okay, maybe the prosecution did do their homework. Maybe they do have a case here. But right now, yeah, I'm.
I mean, Rob D'Amico, you know human nature as well as anyone, because when you're an FBI agent, you're part investigator, part therapist, part people. You got to be a people person here. There's no way to have, like as they say, a tabula rasa mind slate, meaning a blank slate at this point. I mean, there's statistics out there that jurors make their mind up very early on in cases. You got to think that the jury, individual jurors are leaning, not collectively, but individually at this point, have got to be leaning one way or another, don't you think?
I would say yes, but again, like if you read Gladwell in the book Blink, and how people like automatically like somebody or not based on so many things, and interrogating people, I came to the same conclusion and everything else. But I think I used to say when I did Undercover Against the Mob, like if you have a yellow flag, and a yellow flag, it gets to the point where it's a red flag, and you have to keep them down. There's so many yellow flags in this on the prosecution side. I think they're leaning that way. I think that they've come to that thing. But then again, someone on that jury may have some opinion that it's going to be so hard to get over that she in fact did it, that everything the defense side is saying is not resonating with them, because they just have this very stubborn an opinion on something that happened to them that didn't come out in when they were selecting jurors. And it's hard to do that. And I don't even want to bring up the Trump trial, but they all talked about this one juror that was doing things that everyone said was, putting him with that juror on the side of Trump. And the verdict was so quick, I couldn't believe it based on that trial and stuff. And I think that blew people away when you look at it. How could that many people for that trial so long come to that conclusion so quick. And they were talking about one person everybody thought was not going to go that way. And I think it could be this way in the jury. You don't know what people's background are and perceptions are, how they're taking things. And they may be so stubborn in that it's going to be impossible to get over. And then you get it to, like, if it's depending on what side it is, you get to the hung juror. So it's so hard to read people and their reactions. And we talk about reactions of people's death. They like, oh, a parent want to act like this. I have seen horrible, horrible things, and everybody has a different reaction to it, be it their own tragedy or someone else's tragedy, how they deal with their friend, the death of a friend they just don't know. And to sit there and say, hey, this is how they're feeling or how they're thinking, I think is so hard to do. I mean, we sit on this and we talk about it back and forth, and it's just what we see from our experience, but we're not saying that they're not going to come to this conclusion or at the end or whatever.
And that's an amazing and erudite point. By the way, Abby Crossing, hung out with her all weekend. I love people say to me, who do you want to meet? And of course, it's cool to meet the Nancy Graces. It's cool to meet Vinny did a whole thing for the COE for STS. Guy's one of the coolest dudes around. And those blue eyes are dreamy, as we all know. Even Erin Moriarty of CBS 48 Hours, she did something for STS, and I connected with her, and I hope to be doing some stuff with her in the future. I mean, she's a real goat of true crime. She's been doing it, I think, 40 years. And knows everyone. She's a real legend in the business. I saw Dr. Ann Burgess. She did something for STS. She's going to be on our show in the next week or two because there's a whole docuseries coming out about her that's produced by Dakota Fanning. I saw, by the way, I am beyond exhausted, losing my mind. I mean, 2 weeks on a book tour with Carm, go to Crime Con. I saw Ann on the book tour because she introduced us in Boston. Then I see Ann in Nashville because she's speaking at Crime Con. And then Ann says to me, let's do this. I'll come on your show right after Tribeca. Her docuseries is being aired at the Tribeca Film Festival this weekend. Put it this way, she's at least 3 years older than Carm, and she's got so boundless energy. I said to Carm, are you tired? She said, not even a little bit. And I can't I need like toothpicks to keep my eyes open. I won't tell you guys what time I woke up today, but it was not a normal time. Anyone else would check me into a hospital. But Abby Crossing, getting back to my whole point here, meeting the STS community, honestly, and I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's ass, was the best part. Shout out to Susanna Mattingu, everybody who I met. I'm going to forget names. Oh, look at this. Scott, oh, I thought you were talking about me. I got excited. She's talking about Scott. Scott was such a gentleman, Tiff, just as nice and kind as you would think. Scott's great. I love Scott. Such a great guy. Anyway, I digress so much. I almost forgot what I was going to say. But final question for Brother, and then we'll wrap it up. Brother, a lot of speculation now. We all know the lead investigator on this case is Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor. He's a problem because he's being investigated as it relates to this case. There's been, people saying different things that he will take the stand, he won't take the stand. Do you think, I mean, this is a pure speculation, that he takes the stand for the Commonwealth, or will he be called by the defense? What do you think?
I don't see how you wrap up this case without calling the lead investigator to the stand. You're already dealing with evidence that's not the greatest, right? I mean, how do you not call the guy who put it all together and decided to prosecute Karen Reed and explain all of these questions? How do you not do that? So I would be surprised if he doesn't take the stand.
And you're saying for that the Commonwealth will call him, is what you are predicting?
I don't see how they don't.
Can
you imagine the closing argument? The lead investigator they're afraid to call to the stand. This is the guy who's throwing her away in prison. That's the guy who wants to throw her away.
Yeah.
And they don't have.
Now we got bribes kind of going in there. So maybe the defense will call him.
Rob D'Amico.
By the way, I don't think the defense would, because this argument, I feel, if I was the defense, if the Commonwealth doesn't call him, I'm going to get up and call him. Are you kidding me? Are
Yeah.
you really kidding me? The lead investigator who wants to throw Karen away for the rest of her life is not going to take the stand and stand behind his decision? Are you kidding me?
I think
You're going to go back and find you guilty? Impossible.
Yeah. If he doesn't get the stand, all the thing is on the defense to throw in why he wasn't on the stand.
Exactly.
If the defense put him on the stand,
Yeah.
then you're risking that he does really good as a witness, because that's the gamble with that. But if he doesn't take the stand, you can go in closing and just make it all up.
Yeah, Rob D'Amico, have you ever seen a case where the lead investigator in a criminal case is not called? Have you ever seen that?
I haven't, and I've seen it most of the time. The lead investigator is very close to the front. I've seen a couple where the lead investigator is in the back to wrap it all up to do a really good, so the closing comes together. But I've never seen it not, because I think it's really important. Like when I would testify with someone, I would want the jury to see me looking at the person I'm accusing of something, because every time I accused a person of something, I looked them in the eye and I accused them of it. If I was telling a story about what happened or I did something, I would look at the jury so that they could see me. But when I accused, I always looked at the subject so that the jury would see me, that I wasn't afraid to face him eye to eye and say what I think they did.
Very powerful.
Most important question, Lauren Conlin, what did you think of my crushed blue velvet jacket? It was sort of an homage to Elvis Presley in Nashville. Did you like it? Ned Smith apparently liked it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I always attribute men's style to their wives. So
very good.
So yes, I did love it. I was definitely here for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So someone said, by the way, I forget, it's a friend, someone I know said, it was Ida Shaw. She said, don't wrap up. I want you to keep going. There's not a day that goes by where Carm doesn't say the following to me. You speak way too long. No one is interested after an hour and 15 minutes. Start to wrap up. So Carm, that one's for you right there. Not a single day that goes by where she doesn't say that. Someone who people do want to hear from continuously, Lauren Conlin. She's a podcaster and a reporter with a focus on true crime and pop culture. You can find her contributing to crime stories with a little-known host whose name is Nancy Grace. She also has her own weekly podcast, The Outlier. Lauren, your final thoughts as we say goodbye here today.
I'm glad that you had me on this panel. I will keep an open mind. Listen, I will keep an open mind. Like I said, I'm not impressed with the state's case so far. And if I'm wrong, I will 100% admit I'm wrong. But also, brother, you look like you're in an interrogation room right now. I wanted to just say you could use a picture. You could literally use a picture on the wall. I don't know where you are. If you're in New York, I'll come and decorate for you. Let me help you with
Detroit.
this. Detroit? Okay, so sorry. Can't help you there. But I'll
Lauren,
send you a picture.
Carm, read the comment. Read the comment, Carm, from Ida Shaw. Don't wrap up. Don't wrap up. Sierra One Consulting's Rob D'Amico. He is a true American hero. He served his country for 39 plus years in the military, also as an FBI agent. He was once catching Somali pirates in Africa. And when he told us that story, it was during the book tour. And Carm came in and yelled at me and him to wrap it up because we were in her temporary bedroom at my sister's. So only Carm can dress down a man who was in Africa chasing Somali pirates, and we all got scared because Carm was screaming at us, and we all started to wrap up. Rob, it was nothing personal. I think my mother would love you in real life. You're in Hollywood. You're going to have to come down to what she calls the nursing home, which is her Miami Beach condo, and we'll all do lunch one day. But Rob, your final thoughts here.
Like I said, it's one of those, I think there's two things going on. I think totally bad investigation, and I think something happened and people are covering it up and they're getting kind of caught out in the open. I don't know exactly what. And the prosecution isn't putting it in my eyes that it's like, hey, I can overcome all these other things to prove that this is in fact what happened. I just don't think, like Lauren said, they're proving their point. I'm still a bit confused, but like right now, if I had to go into the jury, I'd say absolutely not guilty because I don't think they proved it. But for Martin, it's not the end of the trial. Like that, I'm a Yankees fan. I know I'll get booed on that, but they were down yesterday in the 9th inning, and Soto and it happened. And I'm like, so that can happen too. They put the lead investigator at the end. They have a really good closing and tie it all together, and you're like, holy cow, that's it. Like, I'm convinced. Do I think it's going to happen? No.
Got Donuts. Love seeing brother Counsel on the panel. Guess you could call him brother law. Maybe I'll call him that from now on. I suggested this to Joel months ago. Got Donuts, get with the program. I know you're traveling all over the world. Her fiance, she proposed to her fiance at the Eiffel Tower recently, and I met her on the Toronto leg of the book tour. Got Donuts is hilarious. She has got worse ADHD than me, though, by a long shot. As you can see, Got Donuts, we've had Brother Counsel on for weeks and weeks now, but he is the well-known Detroit civil and sometimes criminal defense attorney, Martin, who also goes by Brother Counsel on YouTube. And I'm going to be watching his latest couple of YouTube shows where he breaks this case down, because God knows that I need to have this case broken down by someone with a better brain than mine. Brother, your final thoughts here.
Well, I'm sorry for being the voice of reason here and telling everybody to keep an open mind. When I'm on the defense side, I want everyone to keep an open mind until the trial's over, so I get a chance to bring my evidence and, argue my case. But I guess it just comes out. But yeah, like everybody said, there's certainly some problems here. There's problems and there's questions, and we're never going to, I shouldn't say we're never going to get the answer at this point, because you never know what's going to happen, Lauren. But, at this point, absolutely, it seems like there's going to be real questions. And I'm thinking about it, the jury can be thinking, I don't buy the conspiracy and therefore she's guilty. Or they can be buying, there's so many questions with investigation, and there's no way I'm throwing anybody away. There's so many different ways that they can be going now. In terms of my empty walls, I've had a number of comments on my channel that I got to spice up my wall. I got to get a plant. I got to hang my diploma, which I got to dig out of
You're
my
anything,
Hey,
but
you called me because it took a while.
Look at Rob.
Yeah, look at Rob's wall. Rob's wall is incredible.
You're a big talker, Lauren. I don't see it so much on your walls either. I'm just saying.
Excuse me. There's lots of things to look at. Look at the dimension that I have going on here. This is, at least has a bit of character. Yours, again, it's like an interrogation room.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Point well taken. I have to work on that. A lot of people make comments that I need to spice up.
Yeah, hit me up after. I'll send you some links, okay?
All right. Look, it's all ending on a sweet, beautiful note. Martin and Lauren are now friends once again. I love it. Guests, please stick around. Patriotic. Best guests in true crime. You did phenomenal. By the way, the Chad Daybell death penalty phase verdict came down while we were in CrimeCon, and that was what was cool about CrimeCon too, is that Pretty Lies, G McKelvey was right next to me. On the other side of me was juror number 18, Tom Evans, and then we had Bob Motto walk by, and then we had Lori Hellis, who just wrote a book about the Lori Vallow case. So it was amazing to have all those people give their insight as the Chad Daybell verdict was read. Never a fun day when it's announced someone's going to be put to death. What a horrible tragedy all the way around. But we are going to continue to stay on Karen Reed tomorrow night. Reminder, I'm going to be in Tallahassee. Carm is actually being honored by a Holocaust organization up in Tallahassee on Wednesday night. They're building a Holocaust memorial up there, and asked to put Carm's name on it. I almost shed a tear from that. And then on Thursday, we're going to be at Hearth and Soul doing a live podcast with famed criminal defense attorney R. Timothy Jansen. By the way, someone said, I always thought you were saying O-U-R, like our Timothy Jansen, but his first initial is R. Timothy Jansen. Analytical Blarney with the final reality check here. This case is going to end with unanswered questions. I have a feeling she's right. Guests, please stick around. Until then, tomorrow night, love you, America. Love you, New York City. Love you, Detroit. Love you, New Jersey. And, of course, Florida. and Canton, Mass, Boston, Dedham, and let's think about John O'Keefe. Guys, stick around.